of victory and the agony of defeat.
Great ball around the corner, Petticini, he beats them all! Junior Polar out wide, bumped away from Trindle, Sharks coming through, none of them can hold it!
Hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another live edition of the Tip Sheet Podcast. Just making sure all my diagnostics are in position. Give me 1 second here. There we go. But welcome to a live show on Tuesday afternoon or Tuesday evening. It's the 21st of October. We've gone from very little to talk about to a lot to talk about in the space of one afternoon. Joining me to break down all of the happenings in the NRL and in Paradise is my good mate Sixties. I am your host John, also known as 4020. And big fella, geez, we are... I even know how to unravel and how to unpick this one. There's a very spicy situation that's developed here at Parramatta in this 24 hours and for the next 12 months. We'll get to that very, very shortly. But as always, checking in on how you're doing and what's happening.
Well, mate, as you know, I'm 5 months into daily visits to Westmead Hospital. So football, as I keep saying, is the most wonderful diversion at the moment and has been for, well, probably a lot of my life, but especially now at the moment. So I'm actually grateful that there's still so much to talk about right now, and we're going to do that very shortly. Just before we do, a shout out to our sponsors, Star Partners Real Estate, Auburn, Narellan and Parramatta, and of course the home of the Eels, Parramatta Leagues Club. Make sure that you support the people who support the Cumberland Throw. And John, also our usual reminders, no matter what platform you're watching or listening to this on, if you can give it a like and subscribe, much appreciated by us. How are we looking at for the live viewers at the moment, mate? Because I was being absolutely inundated with messages today as the Jonah Pezet scenario was unfolding.
Your phone would have been absolutely hammered today. You've already got 54 viewers right from the start, which is a great sort of springboard with a live stream for us. And I expect those numbers to trickle up as people get their notifications that the stream is indeed live on this Tuesday evening. But we've a lot to talk about because this is a very tricky little paradigm to unravel for the Parramatta Eels, mate. But yeah, we'll get to that very shortly. Before we do, we have, I suppose, a sting to hit.
News team, assemble!
Seeing some strong opinions in chat already, and no one's crossing the line, of course, but some really good thoughts in there, and people, sort of feel a little bit confused too as to what's going on. And to help sort of alleviate some of that confusion, man, I'm going to throw it over to you. What happened, or what has happened, what has changed since we last spoke, we last spoke in a TCT tip sheet sort of capacity last Tuesday, and how have we gone from Jonah Pezet being close to signing the Parramatta Eels, presumably for a few years, to Jonah Pezet doing what he's currently been listed as doing, and that's making a little stop in at the Parramatta Eels before moving on elsewhere.
Well, John, you might remember that when we were initially talking about Jonah Pezet, there was some mail around that he might join the Eels on a loan arrangement for a year and was sanctioned by Melbourne and then returned to Melbourne. Then the news came out that he was going to activate his get out clause because he was going to be behind the Stars at Melbourne, and he was, and you would imagine rightly so, ready to get out and be a first grade footballer in his own right. And at that stage, it looked like the Eels would not be interested in a 1 year arrangement, but we got mail in soon after that the Eels were interested in a 3 year deal with Pezet. And that actually, people who watched the podcast last week will remember that as I was talking about, we don't know where things are at. There's apparently a 3 year deal, but we don't know. That was 4 weeks ago we were told about that, and we don't know where things are heading. And then I got live text messages as we were on air saying that a deal had been done. As it turns out, a deal has not been done for 3 years, but it's looking like a deal has been done for 1 year. Now, nothing is official yet. I don't believe there's anything that's been signed as yet, but all indicators are that the Eels are taking on Jonah Pezet for 1 year and 1 year only, and he will then go to the Brisbane Broncos. Now, let's break this down before I throw over to you, John, because I know you've got some very strong opinions on it. I've got some strong opinions, but I'm going to leave out some of those opinions for now. I just want to go over a few things. So the early, well, let's just say if you look at what the Eels would be looking at from their perspective, why would you want someone for just 1 year? Especially after we had a scenario last year where Jason Rolls said he wasn't going to be selecting Dylan Brown in that back half of the year because he was aiming at giving experience to people who were going to be part of the club's future. And that was, of course, centred around the selection of Joash Papali at 5'8" instead of Dylan Brown. Now, when it comes to this perspective, it seems like the Eels want their best possible spine that they could field in 2026. So does that mean maybe they're therefore saying that Riles made that decision last year after the season was gone, whereas in this scenario, he's looking at selecting the best possible spine for the entire season with the goal that Parramatta plays finals football. So that's just the first part of that. So maximum spine strength now. Second part of the equation from an Eels, remember this is trying to take it from an Eels perspective. It provides an extra year of development for the younger players. So Joash just started to get his turn in first grade. Whether that means that the Eels aren't considering him as a halves player anymore, I don't know. But they also have players like Lorenzo Talatina and Lincoln Fletcher coming through and gives them a bit of development time without pressing the button for them to play first grade rugby league. Now, the next perspective from the Eels' point of view would be that besides all else, it provides, I guess, some strength, not just from that spine, but from an overall depth. Now, that's where I'm having to end it, basically, as far as the positives for the Eels are concerned. The downside, and this, I've had a lot of messages today. It's not a power play signing him for 1 year. The Broncos have made the power play in picking him up after he's been with the Eels for just one season. So he's basically had that chance to develop as a player. The Broncos will jump in and take a more developed player for years 2027 and onwards. I mentioned before about that rationale from last year. So to me, a downside is it doesn't fit in with that rationale, and I'm not sure about what messages it sends. To me, there's some mixed messages, if not to the fans, then to the playing group as well. As I said, it's not popular with the fans.
Optically, it's a nightmare. Yeah. There's been among neutrals and fans. It's kind of like, what is going on? What are we doing? Yeah.
And however, what I will say at the end of all of this is, should this play out as we expect with Pezet signing with the Eels for next year, all we can basically ask of him is to honour his contract and provide us with his best possible performances that he can in 2026. And if that's the case, I'd hope Eels fans get behind him rather than having some sort of strange way that they look at him or having a negative way on looking at him as an individual, as a player for 2026. So that would be the hope that I would have. If he signed, then if he delivers with his form, then just get behind him. That's all I'd say on that matter. John, I want to throw to you before I start to add my maybe stronger opinions on things.
Yeah, look, I will provide a sort of a preamble caveat here in that I'm separating criticism of methodology versus possible outcomes here, where next year maybe things click and maybe we go on a fantastic run. You know, rugby league and sports in general is a beautiful, chaotic thing, and the least likely things can happen, and maybe Jonah Pezet is part of what spearheads a near premiership or premiership push, and that'll be a fantastic result. I would still take umbrage at the process. I don't like the methodology here, Craig. Signing Jonah Pezet long term, fine. Like, you're committing to locking in a young spine bar Mitch Moses, who is your big senior piece. That's perfectly reasonable. I think, and there's been, I don't know if you saw it, there was an article that came out more recently just before we went live. Where is it? Let me just find out what the source is before I start going on about it. Is it Daily Telegraph? Yeah, it's Daily Telegraph. So there's a Daily Telegraph article that came out just before we went live. And essentially, again, this has been both across the Sydney Morning Herald and the Daily Telegraph. They've obviously got their club connects on this at Brisbane and Parramatta, and they're trying to spin it as a win-win situation for Parramatta and Brisbane, which is kind of odd from the media, but, you know, good luck to them there. And I think the win they're trying to say here is that Parramatta get a chance to have a bridge option at half, carry them through to 2027, where they've got internal options, which is what you were alluding to before. Lorenzo Talatano, who we were very bullish on this year as a young prospect that went from SG Ball Player of the Year all the way through to a grand final qualifier in the New South Wales Cup, which is a tremendous character arc in just 1 year as a young man, but very talented player, not quite ready for NRL. Okay, I get that. And obviously Lincoln Fletcher, another player you mentioned, who's a year younger than Lorenzo, also SG Ball eligible for another season. So that's the way it's been spun. And I think there was even a line there that pointed or indicated that the Eels always intended to sign Jonah Pezet to a 1 year deal. I don't know about that. Like, in terms of methodology, again, like, if you're laying down massive resources, like, he's not going to come to us cheap, Craig. Like, you can't kid yourselves about that. He's not coming to us cheap. And sorry, that was an attack on you. I want to say you can't kid yourself about that. That was the plurality of that one right there. Then sign a senior option. Like, find a more value option on the cap and invest your resources elsewhere to build a premiership squad for 2027. We are signing a player who is talented, albeit within the Melbourne system, which always sort of has the alarms potentially ready to fire off any given minute when he departs that particular franchise. But he's coming to us on a 1 year deal. We're going to spend premium dollars on him, and I understand that our young players might not be ready. But we're also going to be faced with a situation now in 2026, make sure I get my years right, where if we want Lorenzo Talatano to be ready playing NRL, he's probably going to have to play NRL, be ready to be fully unleashed in 2027. He's probably going to have to play NRL in 26. And you're going to have a situation where if Moses and Pezet are fit, what do? Like, yeah. You could throw him into the Fires round 1, 2027 without a game to his name. Dylan Brown did it, and Dylan Brown obviously has carved out a great career by and large for himself. But so Jazz is saying that Michael Carrion reckons he's coming to us on a cheap deal for 1 year. I would like to believe Michael there, but given his market, given that the Cowboys were in on him, the Broncos were in on him, but couldn't fit him this year or this coming season, I don't know. I don't know.
Well, you would think, look, maybe it's that he sees that, not guaranteed, but as close to guaranteed as you possibly can be, that he'd play first grade with the Eels this year, whereas if he goes to the Broncos, they've still got...
He couldn't go to the Broncos. They haven't got the cap space.
No, but I'm talking about if it was cheap. If it was cheap. Yeah. If they, were able to squeeze in... John, all clubs can find a way to squeeze in players. Well, just ask Gus about how you make it happen. But... and look, John, there's some talk around today as well that Pezet wants to play 7. He's prepared to play 6.
I was chatting to this with some of my mates just before. That is such a cop out of an excuse. In the split slash, sort of hybrid halves meta that we have going on now, the number 7 does exist, and you can be a primary playmaker. But we had Josh playing first receiver, primary playmaker to Mitchell Moses when he was healthy. Like, systems can be put in place where you get to be the guy, even if you've got the 6 in your back. Like, that doesn't hold true for me. Like, maybe it does in his mind, but I don't know. That seems like a cop out excuse, and the way that teams are structured these days, and the fact that Mitchell Moses would be out for Origin, be out for injury, and he'll still get the chance to be the guy. Yeah, I don't know. We've heard it before though. Ethan Sanders said the same thing when he departed Parramatta. Didn't want to be number 6 and Moses is number 7. So clearly these players,
from that player's perspective,
clearly from the player's perspective, there is something there. But that is crazy to me, because if you watch teams and the way they structure their attacks between split halves where you get to run your own edge, and then when you do combine, you can have different looks. Especially someone like Mitchell Moses, who functions as an extra fullback fantastically. Like, if you put him in those wider solution or those wider looks where he can attack the edges as opposed to being the primary ball handler, that's could be a really mainline configuration for Parramatta if Pezet had been on board. So,
what sort of message do you think, John, that this sends right now to Joash?
Well, clearly they don't think he's the guy, like, long term. Otherwise, they would have gone with him, giving him the first look. Again, that doesn't mean that they don't value Josh and don't think he has got a place in the squad. That's a separate thing, which I'm sure you can expand on. But they clearly are looking in another angle where it's going to be, now it has to be beyond Jonah Pezet, and it's got to be Lorenzo or Lincoln, whoever they think is going to be ready for 2027. Maybe it also you can argue it gives time for Josh to hone his game at cup level a bit longer, but I don't know. It must be frustrating because he thought he probably had the first dibs on the number 6, and now he's probably the first backup in a number of positions for the club, for the back line right now, going from 1 through maybe, you could argue maybe somewhere in the centre 3/4 line, and then certainly in the halves.
It seems like he's going to be one of those players that they see has a high utility value, but doesn't own a particular position. Now,
sort of a similar niche as Sewer far longer at Melbourne right now.
Now, that high utility value might mean that in a season of 24 games, he might see 20 games in first grade in a number of different positions when you have things like injury or representative seasons and those sorts of things take their impact. But as you said, John, he may well have been looking at that 5'8" position as being a spot that he had the first shot at. And it's not to say that he can't win that, but I do want to take a step back again and have a look at Pezet. Now, if we were signing someone like a Cameron Munster for a season, let's say in the world,
Cherry Evans, who's out there,
that Cameron Munster was going to go to Perth for 28 or something like that, or was going to PNG for 27, whatever the case may be, right? So he was available for 1 year. He left Melbourne, he was available for a year. You'd say, okay, yeah, I can see the value in getting someone like him. He's going to bring something different to the squad for a year, maybe accelerate the club's development, have more of an immediate threat on finals football for a year. You can understand that. It's much like the Roosters when they swapped out Pearce for Cronk. Now, I know Cronk ended up there for 2 years, but they still did that short-term swap out to get a desired result, which for them was a premiership. Could the Eels threaten for a premiership next year? You know, that's really a big ask for Parramatta and a big ask for someone like Pezet. What I will say is everyone understands the promise that Pezet has as a half. How established is he? How much of a guaranteed difference maker would he be for the Eels to say to their other players, be a bit more patient. We're bringing this bloke in for a year because he can get the job done for a year whilst you learn a little bit more. Now, I would argue, you might be able to look up for me, John, because I haven't done this. How many first grade games has Jonah Pezet played so far? Because across the years, I don't think it's too many because he's had the injury issues. And I think he's basically just been called up.
What's your gut feel on his experience he would bring to Parramatta?
How many games?
Yeah, if you had to put a number to it.
If I was guessing off the top of my head, I would have said 20 to 25.
18, yeah.
Yep. So we're basically bringing in a rookie. That's what it comes down to.
And that's where I really struggle to conceive it as a bridge option. It's you're bringing in. It's not an unknown because he's obviously shown a fair bit in the games he played for Melbourne, but he is not a 200 game, 300 game experienced bridge option, which you could have had with DCE, I suppose, in particular, given the sort of uncertainty about his situation at the Sydney Roosters.
How many games did Joash end up playing for us this year?
Joash, after debuting early in the season, played 13 games. So
there you go.
You're offset, and obviously only half a dozen of those games are at 5'8". So you could round that down if you wanted to in terms of playmaker experience. But yeah, it's that experience offset. It's not exactly significant.
No, and I would then also say how many games for Pezet were off the bench.
Oh, I can probably tell you that. Give me 1 sec.
The Rugby League Project.
Yeah, I was about to say I can just go to Project and they should have. Always a shout out to Rugby League Project, a great resource. So he has played. So that's five back bench. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 of those games. 7, 6. 6 of those games were bench games.
There you go.
So one third of his experience.
You can pull his back.
Yeah.
As well.
Yeah.
Because did he come on in the halves? Did he come on at dummy half? I can't remember. I'm not a.
I would hazard the guess that most of those games he would have come on and played in the halves and maybe facilitated a move with Wishart or someone similar going into dummy half. But I can't tell you categorically that is the case.
But what we're basically saying is, in the huge scheme of things, the big difference between Joash and Jonah Pezet is that I would suggest it's not in the number of games played, it's the fact that Pezet has come out of the Storm system.
Yeah. Because
they're close to similar. You'd almost like, if you end up playing a first grade career and there's 5 games difference in your first grade career, you're going to be said to be a similar experience.
It's a bee's dick of difference in experience there. I mean, looking at chat here, Dan James says he's a better half than Joash, and that's why it's the bridge, or a bridge, sorry. Also, you have a genuine 7 if Mitch misses games. And I think the second part of Dan's comment is probably the one that I was going to expand on. If Moses does go down for an extended period, you're far better equipped to remain competitive, even more so than when Dean was in the team doing a good job. Dean Hawkins, that is. Obviously, Pezet gives you a frontline number 7 option to replace Mitch. But I will sort of...
John,
theoretically,
and because he's got 18 games of NRL experience.
Yeah. And what I would
we cannot say. Look, what we can say is that the eye test says this is a talented player. This is a player who's a specialist halfback. This is a player who has a lot of composure and has a very, very good talking game. If we're recruiting him on a 3-year deal,
the optics and the thought process changed completely. And I mean, we talk about bridges. It's a similar reason why you're not too concerned about a Jack DeBellin signing on the football field, because he comes to you as a cheap, experienced option at lock forward or prop forward or whatever you need. Going back to what Dan said, and Dan, I'm not attacking you. This is actually just good conversation and good sort of thought process here. He's probably right in saying that Jonah Pezet is a better option than Joash. Like, whether you believe the experience is a significant factor or not, on proven form in the halves, Pezet's probably a better half than Joash.
Positionally, experience.
Yeah.
Joe Ash has played a lot of fullback
Exactly.
rather
But my
Yep.
concern in this line of thought is given that we're going to, again, the numbers aren't out there, and I know someone said that, Jazz said that Carianis thinks we might get him cheap, but I still contend I'm not sure about that. The question for mine would be, it's not about how much, an absolute truth of whether Pezet is better than Josh at 6. It's by spending money on Pezet as an addition to the halves playmaking stocks, and therefore putting Josh into a different role or forcing him back down the depth charts. Does that make the team better as a relative rate or relative outcome to taking that money and investing it elsewhere in the squad? And that's always been the framework for this argument, hasn't it? Is should we invest in the halves long term with Pezet? And if not, should we be going for a prop, for a back row, for a centre, whatever we can engineer out of the market? Can we get a player out of a deal? Can we find some value somewhere? And I'm not sure that, and again, this is all as a methodology-based criticism, not an outcome-based criticism, because again, Pezet could take us deep into the finals. We have to wait and see. I'm not sure I like where we went with this. Especially the 1 year deal. A 2 year deal, even if you sign a 2 year deal with Craig, like a 2 year deal still gives you the first dibs at re-signing him if he's a great fit. But the Eels haven't done that. They've gone a 1 year deal. They've made themselves a farm club for the Brisbane Broncos. And unfortunately, to be brutally honest, this is the sort of stuff that we justifiably clown on clubs like the West Tigers for. It's small club mentality.
Yeah. And that's probably the overriding sentiment I had from a lot of people sending me their opinions during the day today. It was funny. I had a message from Mitch, might have been late morning or just around lunchtime, and said, has your phone been in meltdown yet? And I said, no, not yet. I'd had one message from my source saying it looked like it wasn't coming through, the 3 year deal. And that was early in the morning. And then next thing, after no sooner as I said no to Mitch, then it was like, I don't know, it was like a message to the universe, unleash hell, because then all the texts and the DMs and what have you just went berserk, and the overriding sentiment was people didn't like it.
And to your point, it's important here to clarify that us being critical of the club, whether you want to, the recruitment intention is not a singular person. It's not just Mark O'Neill, you suck, or Jason Riles, you suck, which is obviously not true in the last 12 months. They've done some fantastic work in getting these Eels turned around to be as competitive as they are. But being critical of this process does not mean, like you said, you don't support Jonah Pezet as a Parramatta Eel in 2026. It's an important distinction to make, that you can be critical of a process and still cheer for the outcome.
Yeah, of course. And the other thing as well is we've not heard anything official from the Eels, because obviously nothing has been signed as yet. And we will have our opportunity to speak to Mark O'Neill in our annual catch-up, which will happen very soon. I guess, John, the thing is that in our role with the Cumberland Throw, yes, there's things that we work with the club on in our coverage of rugby league, and we enjoy an outstanding rapport with the Eels, but it doesn't mean that we're not going to be critical about
exactly
things. And for many years, people know what my thoughts were on the Darwin arrangement. I never shied away from that. Right now, I'm not a fan of this deal. Like you, it doesn't sit well with me that we've signed a contract where the Broncos are able to come in after a year of development, our work, the Eels' work, and take what we're going to be assumed is a more polished product after the 12 months with the Eels. Certainly more experience, more exposure to the rigours of first grade football. And the payoff for us is supposed to be that our younger players that are coming through will have had a bit more time to develop. Well, it's much like I said about Jonah Pezet as well. We're still talking about potential. We're not necessarily talking about a proven product. And even with the Eels players that are coming through, and we've seen the potential that's there with those players. We're massive supporters and fans of those young players coming through. But being a star coming through lower grades and being an established dominant player, because you need to be in those halves positions, any spine position, being that sort of player in first grade, they're two completely different beasts. You can have all the potential in the world, and we've seen.
I mean, how many? Not just the Parramatta pathways. How many across the NRL have you and I seen in our years watching junior pathways and various iterations of the 20s and 21s across Toyota, Holden, and youth competitions, and then obviously the Jersey Flag coming back? We've seen so many awesome talents that don't eventuate at the NRL level because of that jump. It is the biggest jump you will make in your career as a footballer, going from pathways and reserve grade to the NRL, and it is the ultimate litmus test.
John, we've had so many players that we've seen over the years, like, write that bloke's name down in the book because you'll be reading about him in the future. Or we've watched grand finals where barely a player on either team ends up having an established NRL career. And that's the nature of that funnel of pathways toward to the NRL. Some years there's an abundance of players in the teams that play finals football, or not even finals football, but might be in a particular team or across a few teams in junior reps. And then sometimes there's a real dearth of it. And you know what? So that often levels things out, because if you just had year after year of top line players coming through, no one club for a start could handle having player after player after player coming through. They're going to lose more players than they are going to keep them at that rate, because you can't have teams of players coming through every year, graduating and finding a spot for the majority of players.
One of the biggest reasons why Penrith's outlier run to this run of 4 premierships, which finally concluded, was so successful, is that they had outlier crops of kids that you don't see year on year. It doesn't happen. And Penrith happened to have it happen. And look what happened. And a lot of happens there, but look what eventuated. When you do get that bumper crop on bumper crop, you become a unmitigated powerhouse. But it is such an outlier that you don't see it.
Yeah, and let's face it, I'm not too sure how many stars are coming through underneath their first grade at the moment. I reckon the youngest star that they've got at the moment, young McLean, he's one out of the box.
Great game in the Pacific Championships that we'll talk about on the other side of the
and
podcast.
A number of performances in the NRL this year. So someone like him has been a great addition, but they've had to go out into the marketplace and recruit. They recruited Blaise Talangi, that they recruited Isaiah Papali, right? They had to go out into the marketplace because that wealth of talent in the junior rugby league, I'm not saying that it's dried up, but they didn't get within cooey of finals football in the mats or the ball this year, not within cooey, and saw some ordinary performances by those teams. Now, whether they shake things up, change coaches, change selection policies or what have you going forward, I don't know. You can't imagine that all the talent just dries up suddenly. But back to the point about the Eels with the younger players coming through, there's no guarantee that the younger players are going to be the stars of the future. So, like, in one respect, John, that does say, well, you grab a player while you can. And if you were never going to be able to get them for the 3 years, at least get them for the one. So if that was the case behind the scenes, right, if the Eels were never going to be able to compete with maybe he had a goal to play at the Broncos. Maybe that was his greatest wish if he couldn't be with the Storm. And after all, the Broncos are now the premiers. Maybe being able to play in the same side as Reece Walsh.
I was like, is he Queensland? I was like, oh no, he beat out Ethan Sanders as a New South Wales under 19s half a couple of years back. So it's not even a matter of going. Yeah, but home.
Maybe he's got those ambitions. Maybe it was going to be something that the Eels couldn't compete with. And
look, we haven't seen the deal, Craig. We haven't seen the deal, so we don't know if the Broncos paid a premium beyond what Parramatta will in the pay. Yeah. So that's another factor too. If for all the talk about wanting to play halfback and not being a 5'8", and that influencing his decision, at the end of the day, maybe Brisbane just offered more dollars, more years than what Parramatta were willing to go to.
Yeah, and maybe then that does speak to what I was saying before. There's no guarantee about how players are going to go, so are going to perform. So you have to get the best possible team, the best possible players you can on the field in any given season to get the best possible result. So maybe it's as simple as that for the Eels. But I keep coming back to last year because Shelley's argument when she wrote about Dylan Brown being, I guess, put out to the unneeded camp in the latter half of the season, and her take was, well, you go out to win as many possible games as you can. You aim to put your best possible team on the field. Surely Dylan Brown remains in that best possible Eels team. This was at that point. Now, history proved that Jason Ryles got a tremendous result out of the team that he was picking for the back half of the season. And as it turned out, Dylan Brown played a role at centre and then played a role at the end of the season as well at 5'8". But, John, it feels like it doesn't gel with last year and the philosophy of last year. That's just the overall feeling.
It does feel contrary to all the messaging that we saw out of Jason Ryles and the rest of the coaching staff, insofar as having a clear plan for not just like next year's success, but for sustained and consistent success, having a roster that's going to be there to contend for not one but multiple years. Jonah Pezet is the ultimate stopgap, isn't he?
Yeah. Look, I guess if we were to say, and the club was to say, look, we need more depth in that position. We need to strengthen that position just for 2026. Here's what we've been able to do. We've been able to secure this rising talent. And sure, we've only got him for 1 year, but
rising talent's meaningless when it's a bridge player. I just go sign Daly Cherry Evans.
I'm not gonna disagree.
Like if you're concerned about Mitchell Moses' viability for a full season and staying healthy, go get DCE. Clearly the Roosters don't want him. He hasn't signed. He's been linked with the Cowboys and Cronulla amongst the rugby league rumour mongers. So go get a 300 gamer that can still pull the strings when needed and be a secondary option this year if you feel like you need the bridge.
Well, there's been no deal signed as yet, John. So maybe the Eels could be listening to this and taking your words to heart.
I mean, I understand.
The player whisperer.
There is a delicate balance here for Jason Ryles and for O'Neill and all the power brokers at Parramatta, where you need to have that intersection between developing for 2027, where it looks like that kind of, if you had to put a dart on the board, that looks like where your real first year of legitimate premiership contention should sort of manifest in 2027. And you need to have that delicate balance right now between pushing up towards there and making sure you've got a stable baseline for 2026 where you're competitive and get to the finals. Because getting finals experience this year is almost a prerequisite to be... Excuse me, my microphone. What am I doing? There we go. Getting legitimate finals experience, like 1, 2, 3 games if you can, all the way through to a grand final qualifier. Obviously you want to get to a grand final and give yourself a shot there next year, but getting a couple of games or 3 games of finals experience is absolutely a prerequisite for a real tilt in 27. So you do need stability in the halves to do that. And in that regard, Jonah Pezet is probably as good as you're going to get outside of someone like Daly Cherry Evans. or at least we hope is as good as going to get. Because again, you go back to having 18 games of experience, 12 of which were starting games. So in that regard, I can understand it, but it comes back to me on the opportunity cost, where investing in someone like Pezet, where you're going to pay, let's be generous and say, or circumspect and say about $500,000, which is really cheap for a starting half in this market. Like if you're lucky, you got him for $500,000. That means you now push Josh back down in depth across fullback, 5'8", and maybe centres as well. He could be a bit of a Mr. Fix in that regard. Are we a better team with Jonah Pezet starting at 6 and not Joash? Or are we a better team with Joash starting at 6 and then that 500, 600, whatever, 700 is available being invested in another position? And the caveat there too is that I understand that you can't just say you got the $600,000, $700,000 available, sign someone. You got to be able to engineer that signing. Could the Eels go out there and engineer a signing? Could they go find that back row? Could they go find that prop? I don't know. But
okay, so playing the devil's advocate, John, Mitch Moses played 8 games in 2024, and
was it
how many
16
games was it?
Mitchell Moses. Rugby League Project's getting a real workout today. If I can type properly, there we go. Might as well have it saved as a favourites tab at this point. Okay, in 2024, Mitchell Moses played. Anytime internet wants to conform.
I'm pretty sure it was 8 games.
He played. What did you say? Sorry.
8 in 24.
Neil says 13.
That would have been across all football, wouldn't it?
Where is it here? 26. He played 13 games in
24.
Oh, 25 I was saying. 24 was 8.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, that's what I'm saying. Yeah.
13, 8,
8.
19, 26, 22.
Yeah. So across the last 2 years, he's played 21 games total for the Eels. So if you go on history, you say the Eels need a quality backup half. And
which they went out and got in Dean Hawkins this year, but you would argue maybe they're not that comfortable with him, not that uncomfortable with Dean in spot roles, but maybe if he has to play 5, 6, 8 games, they want even more of a security blanket in the halves. I don't like that. That is to mine, and we had a discussion with a chatter before. That's probably the biggest reason why I could justify this signing, is that if Moses goes down, because you got to factor in two or so games that Moses is going to miss for State of Origin. Presumably he walks up to start in that team now, and the Eels will get again. You sort of accounting for 1 bye to cover State of Origin in the schedule, so you're going to miss him for 2 games at minimum, and he might have to rest for the other game that he plays from and has to back up into. So there's 3 games there, plus some injuries. 3, 4, 5 games there. There's maybe as many as 8 games that you're already sort of budgeting that he could be out for. So, yeah, in that regard, Pezet gives you far better coverage in the halves. Again, assuming that he projects to be that guy outside the Melbourne system with his 18 games of experience, which I think it's probably a relatively safe bet to assume that Pezet's going to be a pretty reasonable player. Like, I don't feel like he's going to be a bust. But, again...
No, I don't think any of us have suggested that today at all. We've said maybe not what you'd say completely proven. No,
yeah, and that's probably the biggest concern about spending that kind of money for a bridge option for Parramatta, is that he doesn't come in as a DCE or an equivalent player. If you go out and you wouldn't have gotten Jamal Fogarty because he had the 3-year offer on the table from Manly, but that kind of player where you're spending $500,000-$600,000, but you're getting triple digits figures of experience and the ability to win games and take over from Mitchell Moses, or the proven ability to take over games in case Mitchell Moses is out. So.
John, I had a question posed to me by Yoko, and she said,
I love that. It's always drama that gets Yoko involved in the Parramatta. I respect that.
Yeah. She said, how different is it really that the Titans have signed a coach to 1 year, and he might only be there for a year?
Like I said, it's the same thing we're planning on the West Tigers for doing in the past. It's the same kind of energy. There's some very colourful language I've seen associated, and colourful metaphors being used for this for Parramatta, and they're not tasteful, and they're not pleasant for us, but it involves furniture and the bedroom. And like optically, this is a nightmare for Parramatta. Like we clowned on the West Tigers, we clowned on the Gold Coast Titans for the claws. It does have that kind of energy, and obviously we do have the benefit of on-field results helping drive this. And again, if you're looking at it as a results-based or results-driven outcome and how you want to evaluate this, there's every chance that Pezet helps us go deep into the finals, or at least get to the finals and play a couple of rounds of finals, which would be seen as a net positive. But if you're, again, coming back to where we're going at it through a looking glass, as a mechanism or a methodology for how we approach this recruitment, I really struggle to fall in line with it. Like, and again, not to say I'm not going to support Jonah Pezet as a Parramatta Eel. I will cheer for him. But I really struggle to reconcile with the benefits we would gain from signing Jonah for 1 year, letting him go to Brisbane as a presumably more developed player, instead of going with Joash. And then again, there will potentially be a junction next year where Lorenzo is playing New South Wales Cup. He's had a great campaign. We need to find out if he's ready to step up to the NRL. And that's not to say that I don't have any doubts that Jason Rice could pull the trigger on it, because he's shown how pragmatic he can be, that he could just say, okay, well, Jonah, you're not here next year. You're going to drop down the reserve grade. And I have no doubts that Riles can execute that call when it comes. But what I do, what then sort of took me the wrong way is the resources that invested in Pezet become kind of irrelevant, don't they?
Yes. So, John, are there any questions from chat before we go any further? Because I think we've just about explored as much of this as we can without taking questions or comments from the chat.
I will work from bottom to top as I go through. So Brad's been a bit of a pessimistic outlook here, but not to say that it's not potentially unfounded. He's concerned that this could ruin the team's chemistry. How do the lads get around a bloke that's there as a rental and taking another player's spot? That is a real concern, Brad, and I think that's going to be one of the challenges for Jason Riles to manage as the head coach here, Craig, is that there is some delicacy to the situation. You've gone out to the market to find a stopgap solution in place of a guy that's pretty clearly popular with the team in Joash. And that's not to say that Joash isn't going to play games next year. He's going to play plenty of football, I would imagine. But Joash does become the second string 5/8 now.
Yeah.
Where we got here? Angus is asking, is any chance that the journalists have it wrong? If there's one sport where journalists are routinely wrong, it is rugby league, specifically the NRL. I just don't see Riles doing this. Look, Angus, to your point, you're not wrong. The journos do love to run a bad rumour, and that's certainly true in rugby league, more so than perhaps any other sport out there. But I think there's enough data points here from people you should trust in the media. And I said this in chat before, when you're getting... when you see a report from Adrian Prashenko and the Sydney Morning Herald talking about Parramatta stuff, I would pay attention there. I think Prashenko's got a very good track history of Parramatta news. I think he's pretty well connected with the club and doesn't report bullshit. And the fact that he's running this story is a pretty telling sign that this is probably going to eventuate. Not to say that it does, because rugby league is a chaotic sport and a lot could happen in 24 hours or 48 hours, whatever it takes to get the deals done. But I would lean towards expect Jonah to be a Parramatta Eel in 2026.
Yeah, there was some good mail, as I said before, that he was coming to Parramatta. The mail we got was wrong about the length of the contract. And, but as you said, not only is there a journo like Adrian Prashenko, who, as John pointed out, does get some good mail from the club. He's a trusted journo with the club. But also, it's like all roads are pointing this way now.
Yeah, there's enough, like I said, data points and journalists from across all different sides of the trench. Where we're talking about the Daily Telegraph and their associates, or the Sydney Morning Herald and the Australian and whatnot. There's a lot of people that would know or should know that are saying that this is happening. So I wouldn't overthink it. Matthias, I've seen you in chat. He's been actually quite positive about this. So Matthias, is saying that he's light years, he being, of course, Jonah, ahead of Footy Dean and Joash, but he's not elite and won't be elite in the future, a solid above average 7 option. And he also, Matthias points out that he got a man of the match award in the finals game this year and looked very composed. Yeah, well, again, if we'd gone out and signed Pezet for a few years, I would not have been upset. I think that there is it's a viable long-term pathway to replace Mitchell Moses in case something goes wrong there or right there at 7, and then still gives you the latitude to bring in your Lorenzo Talatona or Lincoln Fletcher, whichever one you think is better prepared, or Josh if he shows that he's the guy in that regard. We've sort of picked the middle ground here that doesn't really benefit anyone at Parramatta. Sorry. Well, not doesn't benefit. That is a silly thing to say. I feel like the opportunity costs are probably the most exaggerated by doing this.
Yep. Okay. Any other comments there, John, or questions? Strong opinions.
Give everyone a second to put one out there. Riley asked, when would this be confirmed? I think we're probably going to move pretty fast from here, Craig. The fact that the media as a consensus are reporting this probably indicates that I would say within the next 48 hours, you probably expect a media statement from 1 or 2 clubs in regards to, this is no mail, but just the way that the media is reporting it, I wouldn't be shocked if we saw something pretty soon. We're
literally just a tick over 2 weeks from the preseason start.
So you need to have this done and the players integrated and orientated. Yeah. Sonic Boom says, so did we always want him for 1 year or did he reject us for Brisbane and are we doing him a favour by taking him for 26? Which I think is probably an important thing to talk about here because the messaging in the Daily Telegraph article that I was talking about, Craig, was that and I don't know if it's whether it's saving face for the club, but the indication was that the Eels preferred a 1 year deal initially, and so this is still works for them. I don't really understand why you would look at a 1 year, and again, that was contrary to some of the mail that you'd heard. Actively looking for a player to sign for 1 year, and then maybe looking to explore options beyond that is a little bit naive from the club, I would argue, because the player is immediately available to negotiate elsewhere. Because the November, he would be in 3 weeks? November, or no, 2 weeks, November 1. So if the club truly believed that a 1 year deal was their best plan of action, and then to maybe explore extension from that then you're not really committed to the player, aren't you?
Yeah. It's like signing a coach for 1 year.
Yeah.
Well, another one.
Again, you can't count on them and then not maybe turn the magnifying glass back on us. So a little bit of a reflection there for the Parramatta Eels, I guess, or for us and the Parramatta Eels in that regard. And look, Josh and I were talking about this, and he's in chat, and Josh has been, he's not been like a unicorn or an optimist, but he's been very, he's choosing to take the positive spin on this, and I do respect that because it's not like this is an egregious mistake. Josh is saying that Moses is 32 next season. His remaining seasons are finite. If Pezet makes us better even in the short term, you take it. And I don't mind trying to prioritise some short-term success. But again, I'm just... I struggle to reconcile with Pezet improving us more than Josh plus value elsewhere. And the question comes back there, was the plus value elsewhere available? And I don't know if it was. And if it wasn't, then I guess that helps justify the Pezet deal.
Yeah. Any other questions, John?
Riley follows up his question with, do you think Riles thinks we are premiership threat with Pezet there next year? Which I suppose is a pretty good extension of this discussion. How much does Pezet move the needle for Parramatta Eels, Craig? Does he make us a legitimate finals contender and maybe a finals contender plus? Can we contend?
John, I think based on, if we just go on what we saw in the back end of last season, I would suggest that Parramatta would see themselves as finals contenders anyway. They beat the Broncos, beat the Roosters, were, I guess, playing their best football at the end of the year.
Yeah.
And when it comes to self-belief, I know the players and the coaches wish that the season didn't end when it did.
And they'd be given the opportunity to maybe sneak into the finals, I know. Yeah.
Yeah. But anyway, that's the first part of the question is I think the Eels see themselves as finals contenders next year. How much would Jonah Pezet move the needle? I think he'd move the needle in that most critics would look at the Eels and go, Parramatta are not finals contenders without Mitch Moses.
Yeah.
And they might then say, look, the Eels have a better chance of navigating periods of time without Moses if they have someone like Pezet there.
That is where my rationale falls with this entire process, is that for the Parramatta Eels to do damage in the postseason or the finals, you need Mitchell Moses healthy. But you don't necessarily need him healthy for all the year if you've got Pezet carrying the load. And it's kind of sort of analogous to what Penrith have done, well, not deliberately done, but what has happened with Penrith and Nathan Cleary in recent seasons. He has missed serious time during the regular season, but has always been online for the finals. So that's probably where the Eels or Riles and company would really stress that the Pezet acquisition is going to help with the Eels. But then again, you also need to be able to do that post-2026, don't you? So you got to hope that, or you got to believe that your Pezet replacement in Lorenzo or Lincoln or whoever can also do that.
Yeah. So would Riles see us as premiership contenders next year? I think every coach has to have a certain amount of belief in his players that they've got the capacity to challenge for a title. Would the Eels realistically have a chance of challenging for a title? Well, I would say that given how Parramatta performed against Brisbane this year, that again they have to have the self-belief that they can do it. If you beat the Premiers on their home ground in a Friday night game, you've got to have some belief in yourself, especially as that was in the run to finals football.
And as we covered in last week's podcast, in like 3 months, the only 2 games the Broncos dropped were to us and to Melbourne in that run through to and through the finals.
Yep. So obviously, I think there will be realistic assessments because Jason Riles and the recruitment and retention team are going to be constantly looking at the squad and how they can fine-tune the squad to make the Eels a better prospect of taking out titles. But as far as I'm concerned, let's just aim for one thing at a time, which is get to finals football. So are the Eels capable of getting to finals football? Would Riles believe they're capable of it? I'd like to think he would for 2026.
Yeah.
Anything else?
Jackson's in chat and he's apologising. Sorry, they're apologising for being a bit negative. I just told them that it's fine. As we always maintain.
No, this is all about us and fellow Eels supporters putting forward opinions.
Yeah,
because no one's putting shit on him.
And Jackson's been perfectly circumspect with their criticisms and not crossing lines, and that's the sort of the holy grail of what we always talk about when it comes to the discussion of Parramatta and sports in general. It is fine to not be positive or be a unicorn or be all the sort of silly derogatory terms people throw at people that are positive. You can be critical and you can be negative. Just don't be an arsehole about it. And certainly Jackson's not doing that. It's perfectly fine, the situation, to be concerned about what's happened and to not agree with the process and to be worried about the outlook. That is perfectly reasonable. And I mean, you've heard my thoughts on it. I've certainly not been positive. And I have obviously offset that by saying that I will support Jonah Pezet because he's going to pull on that Parramatta jersey next year. But I understand why people are cynical or frustrated with this process, because whenever you sign a player in transit like this, it's very unlike. It's a very small occurrence in the NRL, isn't it? You don't see it often, and it's almost never to the game of the club doing the transit or transit lounge acquisition.
Yeah, and it's literally when you see that situation like Harry Grant had, where he was truly on loan from the Storm to the Tigers, and then you had who was the player that went from the Tigers to South? Wasn't there, that was on loan, but I think he's extended.
Oh, Buddy. They got him from the Dragons, right? The Tigers, and he went to Souths.
Yes.
Buddy the half. Oh, what's his name? Buddy wasn't his name originally, but that's what they call him now. I'm thinking Buddy Franklin because the what's it called? The Swans just made a big signing or trade. Sullivan, yes, thank you, John. Buddy Sullivan.
Yeah, Jaden, isn't it?
Jaden Sullivan. It was Jaden Sullivan, but they're calling him Buddy Sullivan now. Yeah.
Okay. Well, look, Just before we wrap up Eels news, then John, I guess the other thing too is there's been a bit of talk about Bo Fermor coming from the Titans. Yeah,
I didn't see that. Was that on our run sheet?
No, it's not on our run
okay,
sheet.
I'm not crazy.
No. It's been. I've been getting a bit of mail and a lot of questions asked about it, and it's not out of the realms of possibility.
Well, it's funny because he was immediately the player that was linked to the Parramatta Eels back when Buzz Rothfield dropped that.
Yes.
Eels are close to signing a back row comment months ago. And then that quickly was shut down. Titans saying, no, we love Bo. He's going to stick around and whatnot. And then obviously things have changed with a new coach, or maybe two new coaches been appointed to the Titans, and their roster being subject to a massive, like a clean out similar to what Jason Riles did for Parramatta. So maybe there is a possibility there for Fermor to join the Parramatta Eels, I guess.
Yeah, well, I think there's a few things that have to be ticked off on and worked out maybe between the clubs, but it's not out of the question, and I think it's a case of one of those rumours where it has some foundation. So we'll see what transpires there. John, apart from that, I wanted to quickly mention, and I did put this on the run sheet, the Eels performers in the Pacific Championships. First of all, we had the now former Eel in Dylan Brown, absolutely sensational. For the
I texted you that Newcastle will be furiously petitioning the NRL to change their colour jerseys from obviously red and blue to black and white after seeing Dylan do the superhuman stuff he did for the Warriors, the Kiwis in that game. He was awesome. He played a fantastic game, both as an on-the-ball playmaker and as a support option chasing kicks.
Yeah, he was just tuned in the whole way. It still hurts that he won't be an Eel.
Yeah.
Moving forward, because we wouldn't have had most of the conversation that we've had tonight if that contract for Dylan hadn't come about. So, what did you think of Gideon Katonga playing for Fiji, John?
I thought he was solid. I thought he came back from injury. Obviously had a bit of rust on the old body there, or the play of his game work. But started pretty well, got a nice offload away, ended up with like nearly 130 metres, scored a try at the end. Pretty much everything you would have wanted to see from the young back rower who was unfortunately robbed of the last couple of months of the NRL season due to a hip drop tackle. And I think it bodes well, again, hoping that all these players get through unscathed, or maybe just get a bit of scrapes and bruises at worst. It bodes well for him heading into the 25-26 preseason.
John, I think Gideon's a superstar in the making. I really do. I think if he continues to develop like he did this year, he will be our version of Olakau'atu.
I mean, he's got that difference-making tackle busting ability, hasn't he? And the ability to generate a really positive offload. He had a very raw start to his life as a Parramatta Eel, Craig, and had a lot of fans frustrated with some of the judgment errors and lapses that he had. I think walking back through the ruck against, was it Penrith or the West Tigers? There was a really bad penalty early in the season, and there was a drop here and there. And finally, I've referenced it in the podcast before, but funnily enough, it was that pre-game show we did with Muggo, who sort of pointed to Gideon as the player in the lineup that he would not drop and would persevere with, because he's going to come good soon. And that was almost the breakthrough game for him that week. Which was particularly auspicious commentary work there from Muggo. And you can tell there is still a lot of unearthed potential in Gideon, and whether both he and Mitch can stay healthy and really build that combination. Because he'll be working with Pezet, wouldn't he? Because he was he was primarily down the left. So a bit of discontinuity there, unfortunately, for Gideon long term. But can he build a working relationship with Pezet from day one? Will be a big key for the Parramatta Eels.
Yep. Now, we might, if there's any Eels that you wanted to talk about when we do, we'll
roll it into the overall coverage.
Yeah, we'll roll into the results last week, our tips for this week's Pacific Championship games. and just a bit of signing news around Manly. But apart from that, mate, time for your musical interlude. You're not going to go with most people I know think that I'm crazy.
Well, would have been a fair comment on me any given day of the week, honestly. But look, for all my grumbling and complaining and criticising and over analysis of why this deal and the process is wrong, and I don't agree with it. At the end of the day, you're still a fan of the blue and gold, and I think it's fair to say you got to have a little bit of faith. The late great George Michael.
Are you a big George Michael fan, John? Are you letting us know anything there?
You got to respect the artist, mate. And George Michael, one of the classics there, formerly of Wham, and obviously as a solo artist there too. And Faith is such a earworm, such a bopper. Chat's going. Chat's got the dance moves going. Kicks and Chris Hill. Good stuff. But at the end of the day,
are you ignoring the obvious genius of Andrew Ridgeley?
No, but I feel like the face band gets most of the props, don't they? It's often the case here, and with Faith, I think it's probably a great. I think there's a lot of anthems for Parramatta fandom, isn't there? And Faith is certainly one of them. Fortunate Son is another one. We're certainly no fortunate sons when it comes to the Parramatta Eels.
Yes.
But Faith is up there, and well, as much as I grumble and disagree and will counter contend of how things have played out today and moving into next year, at the end of the day, Jonah Pezet presumably will be a Parramatta Eel, and I have faith that he'll get the job done for us in 2026.
Yeah, very good, mate. Very good. Now, just very quickly going through the results last week. So we had, I guess, an expected result of Fiji 44, Cook Islands 24.
Cook Islands put up a bit of a fight,
They did, but when all was said and done, it comes down to experience, and I think the Cook Islands need to have a few more players that declare their loyalty for Cook Islands heritage moving forward. So, and then of course you had that classic battle between the Kiwis and Toa Samoa, 24-18 result there. We spoke about Dylan Brown earlier, but mate, it was a case of missed opportunities, wasn't it, for the Samoan team? How many tries did they butcher?
So there was 2 for Taulagi down the right, yeah? He had 2 that he missed. And then you had Brian To'o bottle one down the left, and then Blaze tried to connect with, who was it? Was it Dean Mariner through the middle? And
yes,
they bottled that one. So you're looking at least 4 tries that were left on the cutting room floor there for Toa Samoa. Really fun game, Craig. I had a blast watching this one. Relatively high quality. Like, not to say it was perfect, but it was intense and really big shots. I think there was a couple of shoulder charge cautions that went out there, but some booming hits, some stellar play. Dylan Brown stepping up to be the man in the moment for the Kiwis. And pretty much everything you want out of a couple of, I think it's probably fair to say that Toa Samoa are genuinely a Tier 1 country. So a couple of Tier 1 nations going at it hammer and tongs.
Yep. And then, of course, we had the women's game, and this is the one that really caught me by surprise. The Cook Islands.
Yeah, we tipped this one wrong.
Just laying PNG to waste, 34-6.
We had the Orchids as the heavy favourites here, and they got annihilated.
Oh, I mean, that's actually a highly embarrassing scoreline for the PNG team. It really is, because, look, I guess there are some women NRL players have Cook Island heritage that have chosen to represent the Cook Islands and are, I guess, players on the ascent in the NRLW, but that 34-6 scoreline, the one thing that PNG teams have always done in the past was just be competitive above all else. They seem to find another level that they can play at. In some respects, the PNG international performances, I mean, perhaps more so with the men, but it almost seems like they have a sense of pride akin to Queensland in Origin. Like, it just draws the best out of them. That's one that they would rather forget. Talking about rather forgetting, to go from 20-0 to 22-20 loss for Fetu Samoa against the Kiwi Ferns
would have been the upset of the round, even considering that previous one there between PNG Orchids and the Cook Islands Moana. If the Ferns had been knocked over by Fetu Samoa, no doubt would have been the biggest upset of the Pacifica Championships, male or female.
Yeah. It's look, there was. I think I spoke to you and said there was some interesting calls that were made.
Yeah.
And I don't back away from that. It was. I think there was one in particular where even the commentators picked it up. It looked like it was a certain six again that should have been ruled, and instead I think the Kiwis got given possession because the Samoan team only got one more play after it looked like a certain touch of the ball. I think there was an injury stoppage at the time, and then they went the length of the field and scored their first try at that point. So anyway, John, let's look quickly at this week's games. Cook Islands Moana against the Tonga 13. We'll start with the women's. What's your thoughts with that one? Can Cook Islands go back to back, or is it a case of there's too many quality players in the Tongan lineup?
If they can go toe to toe with the Kiwis, there's no reason to think they can't go toe to toe with Tonga. We do have obviously Martha Mattelli repping the Eels for the Tongans, but I don't know. Like, the question is, do they have enough juice left in the batteries to back it up, Craig? Because if they play like they did against the Kiwi Ferns, then they should be the heavy favourites.
No, they played the PNG.
PNG. God, sorry, you're right. Yeah. PNG. I got my teens crossed up there. Probably you'd almost set the line at $1.95 here, right? Because they crushed PNG.
Yeah. And the halfback certainly had a
Kiriaratu's a pretty handy player. Has done good things in the NRLW, and we always talk about it with World International Rugby League and the Pacifica countries. What often is the handbrake or the bottleneck for a lot of these squads, male or female, is a lack of playmaking prowess at 7. And having someone like Kiriaratu be able to handle the playmaking responsibilities and give you a sharp kicking game and organisational abilities is such an advantage. So I'm almost leaning towards installing the Cook Islands as the favourites here.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a tight contest based on that. As you said, we've got the Eels' interest with Martha playing in the centres, interestingly, rather than out on the wing.
Which I think centre also suits her game too. She's got that almost like the power of a back row of how she carries herself sometimes. So the question will be, can they give her quality service, give her opportunities to attack consistently? Because she might be.
I think this Tongan team is still at an international level is still really in the embryonic stages.
Yeah, I think you're right looking at this. I see some NRLW experienced players, that the ones that really jump off the page, obviously the ones that have Parramatta affiliations. So Shelley Malungi, we saw her a few years back. I know Kalasapani Hopewadi's played a bit in NRLW. Shannon Muru, obviously Jade Fanua for the Parramatta Eels formerly. So there's probably a few more NRLW players there that I don't recognise. Natasha Panatani is the sister, right? Was it cousin or sister?
Yeah.
It's a sister, right? Yeah. Sure. Yeah, so there's another one there. So, yeah, look, they've got some NRLW experience, but the Cook Islands have a lot of momentum going to this one, and you shouldn't undersell it when it comes to these sort of close matchups, having that momentum and even just having the game under their belt. Tonga are going to be a little bit raw. Obviously, they've got a bit more rest, but they're also not in game form. And Cook Islands are, and that's a big one.
Yes. So, of course, the next game is the Kangaroos against Samoa, and I'm sorry for laughing, but you just look at the Kangaroos team.
I mean, you look at who's not playing for the Kangaroos. Like Sarah Togatuki, Abby Church, Jocelyn Kelleher can't make the team. It's a formidable lineup, and this is a team that put 90 on the Roses less than 12 months ago at Vegas, and they've been ruthless. Like they don't put the Q on the rack. The Prime Minister's 13, the XIII, were happy to put 50 on the PNG squad last 2 years in that exhibition game, and internationally the Kangaroos have never put the Q on the rack. So Fetu Samoa had a great contest against the Kiwi Ferns, Craig. They pushed them hard and could have won that game if but for some of their own issues, and then obviously you mentioned the officiating. But the Kiwi Ferns are probably not in Australia's postcode, and Samoa had probably their best international performance of their current time to nearly knock over the Kiwis. So it's going to be an almighty effort to to keep this one from getting absolutely blotted out.
Yeah, it's interesting, John. Gee, you'd have to say that the representation of the Roosters and
the
Broncos,
grand finalists, yeah, and
it looks quite strong or recruited players.
Seriously, Upton, Robinson, Kelly, Penatani Gray obviously plays for Cronulla, but Surges, Briganshaw, Southwell is not or was not there, but will be. She joins them. Rima Butler, Keely Davis, Jessica Elliston. Not sure.
Broncos, isn't she?
Is she a Broncos?
Is she Broncos or Titans?
She is Titans. I believe it's Titans.
Titans, yeah.
So she's one. Kezi Apps comes by way of the Tigers, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so she's their marquee signing. Yasmin Clydesdale, who, where's she at these days? She
the Knights?
Knight still? Yeah, she's a Knight. Yeah, she's a Knight, I believe. But Koenig, Keely Joseph, Ellie Johnston's a Shark, and Jakia Whitfield. So, I mean, like, seriously. Crazy.
Yeah. So it just tells you where the strength is. Look, it's unfair to even be talking about this game because I fear that it'll be 50 to 60 points. If Australia can put on basically a century against England, if they're playing to their potential, it's going to be ugly, and it's not a criticism at all of the Fetu Samoa team. It's just where the Eels are at. The Eels, where the Australian team is at. Okay, so John, that's the women's games, and of course now with the men's games this week, you've got the Kumals against Cook Islands on Saturday, and well, I'd like to think that the PNG will do a better job. The men will do a better job than their women. I think it's an important game for them to, I guess, flex their international muscle, as it were, because they're certainly ranked higher than the Cook Islands.
Again, recognised halfback with Lachlan Lamb there in the 7. Got reasonable NRL experience in the backline. Robert Darby, Zach Laybutt, Nene McDonald, not recently NRL capped, but with plenty of caps to his name. Alex Johnston, so got a reasonable 2 to 5 there. Edwin Apape was a bit of a cult hero on the international scene last couple of years. Parramatta incoming recruit Jack DeBellin in the front row. Reece Martin has played NRL, but not for a while. So probably a bit skinny in forward experience there. The real interesting one there is Cooper off the interchange, Craig. He is a talented player. Son of Marcus, plays lock forward. Generally plays lock forward, can play an edge too. Prodigiously talented Gold Coast Titans prospect. I'm surprised he's not starting, honestly.
Yes, yes. So who are you tipping in that one, mate?
It's a home game, right? Yeah, Santos National. So the Kumals at home. Look, the Cook Islands, they acquitted themselves all right against Fiji. I will go for the home team here. Did they get any notable inclusions there for Piakura's playing? Cook Island Pack's all right. Cook Island Pack's not bad. So I'll barely give it the PNG.
Now, of course, the big clash comes at Suncorp Stadium between Tonga and Samoa. And, man, good luck picking the winner in this. In all seriousness. Like, John, Paul Alamotti can't get a start.
Yeah, Parramatta's own Will Penasini also surplus the requirements here. So when Paul Alamotti and Will Penasini can't crack the back line, you know it's pretty stacked. Kuli Kefi Finifiliaki, who's a very good back rower, also on the outside looking in. Tonga, they've got a halfback, mate. They've got Isaiah Katoa. They don't have a recognised 5'8". They do have Parramatta's fullback Isaiah Iongi playing 6, which he has a little bit of experience in that role in the Penrith Pathways. And that's opened up the way for Leah Hopewadi to start at fullback, which is what we speculated back when the squads were announced, that there wasn't recognised 5'8" there. They'll probably leverage Iongi's ability to play as a frontline playmaker. That backline, Hopewadi, Tupou, Kula, Toya, the Rookie of the Year, although somewhat controversial, I guess. Sione Katoa on the wing. Very good backline. Up against RTS, To'o, Tango of the Isaac variety, Mariner and Talangi. Yeah, it's a hell of a game. Who do I go with here? What about the interchanges? Who's got the better interchange? Oh, it's got to be, better interchange has to be Tonga's, right? Yeah, it's Tonga's. I think I might go with Tonga for this one, mate. They've got the better recognised 7 and the better bench.
Yes, and that would be the reasons I'd go for Tonga as well. What keeps me unsure about Samoa, keeps me wary, not unsure, wary, is that Samoa have the game under their belt.
You can't, and I've spoke about it before with the ladies' teams before, Cook Islands up against Tonga. You can't underestimate that. Just having the match fitness and the connections being shaken out that one game, it can mean a lot in close matches. So that could be what counts against Tonga here.
Yeah, so I'll be interested to see how Iongi goes at 5'8". Heaven knows, having another, a little twist to the Eels' halves.
Just imagine man of the match and then fans, demanding he plays 6 next to Moses and get Josh back to number 1. What are we expecting crowd-wise for this? Because it should be a pretty good turnout.
I think they were talking over 40,000.
I hope it's over 40. It'd be awesome to see the red and blue taking over Suncorp, as the two sort of waves of colours and connection and support there.
And I think I saw a percentage breakup where it was something like 52% of tickets have been bought by Samoans and 48% by Tongans. Nice. So it's, I think maybe the Tongans get a slightly bigger support in New Zealand. I know when they've played New Zealand, you're talking about sellouts here. It wasn't quite a sellout last week between New Zealand and Samoa. But I would imagine a Tonga and Samoa game in New Zealand would sell out that stadium. And if they're getting over 40,000 in Brisbane for this game, look, there's got to be people there that have no Samoan or Tongan background.
I saw people in chat talking about the Samoan war dance before the game and seeing Junior lead it and how sort of got the hairs in the back of the neck rising. Imagine that at Suncorp with Tonga, with their counter and 50,000 fans losing their minds, just screaming in support. Could be some all-time rugby league cinema.
Well, John, we're talking about a series where the final's going to be played at Combank Stadium at Parramatta. I've even had Yoko talk about going
for the atmosphere.
Game,
that's
having an interest in going
awesome.
to the final.
Yeah.
So when you're talking about someone who has to be an Eels supporter by default, and is not did not grow up having any interest in rugby league at all, and declared the other week that she's missing the football, and then wants to talk about going to the final at Combank Stadium. It's
it's starting to bleed out. She's trying to closet all her rugby league fandom, and it's starting to bleed out. And
well, last year she wanted to go drive along O'Connell Street before the final last year, just to see all the colour with the Tongan supporters that were there. And it was something that the cars that were doing laps of O'Connell Street with people hanging out of the cars and flags and music. And
I mean, the pageantry and the sheer support of Samoa and Tonga and whatnot it's incredible, isn't it? And we're not there yet. We are not there. And I do want to stress that we're not there, but we are getting close to a golden age of international football for rugby league. Like you look at the squad's been assembled by Tonga, Samoa, the Cook Islands. They're obviously a step behind, but they're building. Like they've got some genuine NRL stars that can turn out for them now. The Comals will get better as their domestic product gets stronger with the NRL club coming in, the Chiefs coming into inception in a couple of years. Obviously, New Zealand's in a great position. England's incredibly competitive too. The Australian squad, which has been announced, by the way, Craig, we can talk about that shortly, is as strong as it's ever been. But they've got legitimate contending like squads among other teams. And we're still getting that bottleneck, as you mentioned, number 7 for a lot of these rosters. But you're getting your Sione Katoa starting to trickle in. You're starting to get these young playmakers. Can Blaze Talangi take that step and be that player long-term for Samoa? Jerome Luai obviously has played a bit of halfback, but he's not a halfback per se. But they've got 2 talented halves there in Luai and Blaze. It's just a matter of finding those out-and-out halves, I guess.
Yes. So, pick a winner, mate.
I'm still going to go with Tonga. I like Isaiah Katoa at 7. I like the bench. I think that they're very evenly matched up in general, though. Like, this is 2 out. If you had either of these teams as NRL franchises, essentially, you would not be complaining.
Yep. Okay. Now, you mentioned the Kangaroo team. Kangaroo Ashes team for the first test has been announced. Can you run through that, please?
You're not going to like it, but we start at fullback. No surprises here. Dylan Edwards has lost his spot to the Clive Churchill medalist, Reece Walsh, the most electrifying man in rugby league entertainment. You got Mark Nwangani-Tawaze and Josh Adokar on the wings. So well done to the Fox for winning back a starting berth for the Kangaroos. It's an all-Brisbane affair in the centres, Katoni Staggs and Gehamet Shibasaki. In the halves, Mitchell Moses has been overlooked, Craig. Boo, boo. Cameron Munster taking number 6 from Mitch Moses. Nathan Cleary at halfback. Pat Carrigan, Harry Grant and Tino Fa'asuamala Awi round out the front row. Angus Crichton, Hudson Young and Isaiah Yeo, who will captain the team, are the back rowers. Tom Dearden takes the utility spot on the bench, beating out both Moses and Ethan Strange. I think will probably be the other option there. Lindsay Collins, Ruben Cotter and Keon Kolol-Matangi are the rest of the bench forwards there. Reserves for this game, which I don't think really makes a difference. I guess one of them will be a concussion substitute. Bradman Best, Lindsay Smith and Mitchell Moses.
Yeah, well...
I don't know what more Moses has to do to win a spot.
No. Yeah, look, he is clearly the best representative rugby league halfback in the world. Like, let's be legit here. It's Nathan Cleary is legendary as a club halfback, but we've talked about representative football and the difference and the level of play that Moses is able to rise to on a football field in Origin football, where everyone is a class player, and it's not being highly critical to say that Nathan Cleary has not delivered at that level as he would have been. It's not saying he's played poorly. What it's saying is he hasn't risen to the ultra elite of the elite. Whereas I think it's fair to say that Mitch Moses has delivered as a standout performer at that level.
No doubt.
And I think from that perspective, he deserves the job. Now, Eels supporters be happy because that's one less game where they have to worry about Mitch Moses. Now, whether he's just getting a holiday in this instance and is not going to be required to play on the tour. We don't know. Who knows? The Kangaroos might take a 2-0 lead in the series, and maybe Kevy plays a few players.
Oh, look, everyone on the tour is probably going to get a game. If it's not a dead rubber in the game 3, maybe that might come to contention. But I think they'll probably give everyone a game. But yeah, it's pretty clear that he's not.
There's no mugs. There's no mugs on the tour, so it's not like it's cheapening the jersey in any way. If you have a few other selections, no one's going to say the jersey's cheapened if, say, Moses comes in for Cleary or Munster. Like, no one would suggest that. So, but anyway, I guess we'll wait and see what happens there. Did you have something to say about the match this week, John? Was there a little bit of mail?
There was some talk. Let me just go find the article that the Wembley crowd could be a big one. Where is the article? Which would be great for International Rugby League if they can get a full house at Wembley. Where is it? It could be the highest ever attended. So Live Rugby League is reporting that the Wembley Ashes Test passes huge attendance milestone as ticket sales continue to rise. Next week's Ashes Open between England and Australia looks set to be watched by one of the biggest crowds seen in decades for an international fixture in the UK. Rugby League Commercial have confirmed that ticket sales as of Saturday morning have surpassed 54,569, the figure which watched Great Britain defeat the Kangaroos in the infamous Test at the same venue in 1990. So they're looking to go like towards 60,000, it looks like, if they can get more sales through the week and then the walk-ups. So big, really good.
Yeah, absolutely. And John, I guess the only thing we need to do to wrap up the podcast this week is there was a little bit of news around Manly that they've secured Etherington from the Broncos, which is basically, I guess, going to cover or at least upgrade the retirement of O'Shea Ole.
Yes, medically retired with a shoulder injury. Oh, the one thing I forgot about, the dummy half Croker, also potentially staring down the barrel of medical retirement for Manly. I think maybe a knee.
Yeah, I think there was some talk about that during the season.
Which is, he's only 28 years of age, I believe, and has been a pretty handy dummy half. There's like, this isn't one of those, BS medical retirements. I think this is a really unfortunate, potential medical retirement. So that's a real tough one there for Croker, and certainly hope that he can find a way to get back to being healthy and able to play. But these guys put their bodies through an absolute war zone in the rugby league, and it's always important to remember how battered they are in a given week. Once you play your first game in a row in a season, you're never fully healthy. You can be healthy, but you're not fully healthy.
And John, I should mention as well that I was talking about Josh Alloway in saying
O'Shea Ole, the famous faux pas, by PVL at Magic Round.
Yes. There may be people who never saw, or maybe that are listening to this, maybe weren't rugby league followers back there when PVL had struggled to pronounce Josh Alloway and said O'Shea Ole. We should also mention former Eels player.
Yes, came to us via New Zealand, played in our under 20s it was back then. He was in the legacy of that program, and then got poached by the Tigers. Was it
yes.
Right? Yeah, the Tigers, and then ended up at Manly.
Tigers liked some of those Eels players from around that era, so we didn't mind.
We do have speaking of juniors, we have a question from Nine Riffin, who I promised to run it by you, mate. He's looking at the macro here, the big picture. He says, we talk about it. He says, is it worth for Parramatta looking potentially at Kobe Black if the Jonah Pezet deal goes through? I don't see a clear path for him to play in the Broncos team. If those that are confused as to who Kobe Black is, the incumbent under-19s Origin half for Queensland, who had a pretty good game in that win against New South Wales. He's only 18, I believe. I think maybe he's turned 18 this year. I'm not sure if he's 18 or turning 19, but obviously under 19s has to be at least under 19. It's a fair question, but I suppose the question is that far down the track now, because he's going to be at least 2 years out, you'd think. Do things shake up differently for the Broncos? Ezra Mam, is he still going to be in the halves? Does he play other positions? Does he stay at the club? He's one indiscretion away from a deregistration, I'd argue. But it's a fair point. Should the Eels target him, or should other clubs target him?
John, that question was put to me as well, and I have to say I hadn't heard anything at all about any sort of swap deal that might take place with the Pezet signing. In fact, I don't even think it would really come under any sort of swap deal, because the Broncos are just straight out signing him for the 2 years after his Eels contract, expires. The fact is that he's therefore the same age as Lincoln Fletcher, and the Eels have an extraordinarily high opinion of Lincoln Fletcher.
And that is something that, if you sort of try and read between the lines of the media coverage, that's been consistent messaging from the Parramatta Eels. And as much as we talk about the player managers working the media, clubs work the media too. And the Eels have been pretty transparent about how much they rate Talatona and Fletcher. That has been messaging consistent from the Lockie Galvin era, or the pursuit of Lachlan Galvin, right through to what's happening here with Jonah Pezet. So, and certainly we saw plenty of Lorenzo Talatona this year, Craig, right through junior pathways in the SG Ball, where he was Player of the Year, through to that grand final qualifier against the Warriors, who were the eventual premiers in the reserve grade. And Lincoln Fletcher, we only saw on ball, but he did a great job there. And I believe he had schoolboy commitments, Craig, which I think limited his ability to play other brands of Parramatta football this year. So, because obviously you have to balance club and school commitments, both academically and sporting-wise, in that regard. But Fletcher, I expect to be a player that could take a big jump next year too.
Yes, yeah. And he has got family commitments too, young Fletcher, young Lincoln Fletcher. So he's got a lot on his plate as a young bloke.
Chris Hill, sorry to jump in, does ask a pertinent question, which I think you've summarised it well, maybe. He says, could the Broncos have already signed Pezet and then he signed with Parramatta? Does that get around the anti-tampering rules? That's how I imagine it's played out, is that because he's an unrestricted free agent after invoking that clause, he can talk with anyone about anything. But if he were to sign the Parramatta Eels, initially he would then be beholden to the November 1 cutoff, right? Which would still put him in, not that it means anything, but would put him at that week and a half timeline to then renegotiate elsewhere. So I'd imagine that they've concurrently negotiated these two deals, which is within the restrictions of anti-tampering, because he's a free agent. So I think it's while it's not cool for us, it's cool in a vacuum as the framework of a deal being worked that you don't usually see in the NRL, that it does successfully navigate the anti-tampering rules without any bullshit. Like, this is just straight up, because he's a free agent, they've negotiated two deals simultaneously that work across two windows that don't overlap. So in that regard, It is cool. It just maybe not so cool for Parramatta.
Yeah. Well, John, I think that just about wraps things up, mate. What have we done? We've done nearly an hour 40.
Oh, yeah, we found a way to do an hour 40 with pretty much one piece of Parramatta news, albeit a huge one, and then the Pacific Championships. So I suppose well done to us. Bit of a pat on the shoulder there. We can yap with the best of them.
Shout out to Chris Ricketts, who will actually be at, I think, the Ashes test on the weekend.
Nice.
So
another jersey to be added to the collection there.
Yeah, we'll have to get him on the podcast. We'll have to do a recorded version. Obviously, Chris has been talking to us about some recording ideas. The time difference still doesn't work well with appearing with us live. I think it's even worse. I think it's something like about 2:30 in the morning or something like that for him. Anyway, he was just saying that he's looking at any time that we can for a recorded version, jumping on and giving us a bit of feedback about that. So, okay, mate. Well, that just about takes us out. Again, thank you to everyone who joined us live. Thank you to everyone who is listening on whatever platform they listen on. We really appreciate you sticking with us in the off-season, because there's no off-season for the Cumberland Throw. And, of course, no matter what platform you're watching or listening to this on, if you can give it a like and subscribe, that's really good. I have noticed our subscriptions continue to inch up there, mate, and we are getting those number of listens at a really solid number. The watches on YouTube have been really solid for this time of year. So I appreciate that. Thank you to our sponsor, Star Partners Real Estate, Auburn, Narellan and Parramatta, and of course the home of the Eels, Parramatta Leagues Club. And John, thank you for another fantastic episode. And as I always say, go you mighty Eels.
Yes, sir.